Heal with Astrology presents What's Your Sign? Today we're going to be talking about Capricorn. Everything you ever wanted to know about having a Capricorn Sun, Capricorn Moon, or Capricorn Rising, which is also called the Ascendant, and just general Capricorn information. We'll start with the basics. The picture on the top right-hand side is a symbol for Capricorn. Capricorn's traditionally seen as being ruled by the planet Saturn. And just some interesting facts about Saturn. It has the second shortest day, which means that it spins faster on its axis than any other planet except for Jupiter, but it has a really long orbit. It takes 29 and a half years for it to orbit the sun. And one of the things that sort of brings up is that it has an interesting relationship with time and with the passage of time, and we're going to talk about that a lot throughout the course of this video. The other thing that's really interesting about Saturn is that it's the least dense of all of the planets. It's made up of mostly gases, and those gases are constantly in a state of reaction to each other, creating, huge storms all across its surface. And so what's interesting about that is that diamond rain actually falls on Saturn. So what happens is lightning strikes in the upper atmosphere, and it forms soot. And that soot then drops down, and through, this incredible experience of a ton of pressure and a ton of heat is compressed into diamonds. And as they fall further and further down, closer and closer to the center of the planet, those diamonds take a solid form and it becomes rain. And I think that's really interesting because I think it's going to come up a lot in our conversation about Capricorn, which is this sort of energy of like incredible heat and incredible pressure forcing you to become something really extraordinary. And we'll talk about the experience of Capricorn, which is about a lot of those kinds of things and a lot of these kinds of themes. This alchemical kind of experience of life is going to come into play throughout the course of this video. Capricorn rules the 10th house. The 10th house has an association with career. I think a lot of people get confused between the 6th and the 10th house. The 10th house is the status that you get for what you do on a day-to-day basis. It's how someone would describe you to someone who'd never met you, this is Bonnie, she's an astrologer. This is Jen, she's a social worker. This is Harry, he's a carpenter. Those kinds of things are what sits in the 10th house. It's how people would describe your work and how the world as a whole would see how you contribute to the world. And so it has a relationship with our purpose. Our 10th house is about, how we give back to the world, how we contribute to the world. It also has a relationship with history. It has a relationship with old age. It has a relationship with fatherhood. And it has a relationship with the part of us that's sort of responsible, reliable, accountable, forthright, and honorable. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of those themes throughout the course of this video. So we're going to move into the mythology, just like most of the other zodiac signs. The myths around them can be a little bit contentious, and there's lots of people with different opinions about what the myth of Capricorn is. The one that I subscribe to comes from the scriptures of Delphi. It's about a race of sea goats. So they're like mostly goat, but with a little bit of a fishtail. And the father of that race, and they're an ancient, like really, really, really ancient race, okay? And the father of that race was named Croesus. And the race itself was considered, intelligent and honorable, and they lived in the sea. And the father of the race, Croesus, was tied to Kronos, which is the god of time. And Croesus himself could control time, okay? And all of his children, his little sea goat children, all of a sudden, through the process of evolution, became really drawn to the shore. And so, they went onto the shore and basically, basked in the sun and enjoyed it. But that put Croesus in a place where, he was completely alone in the sea. He was the last of his kind and holding on to the past while all of his children evolved into a new state of being. And Croesus really didn't like that. He didn't like the loneliness. He didn't like the loss that came with it and all this kind of thing. And so he could control time. So he basically he turned back time to bring his children back to him. and to prevent them from evolving, right? He kept turning back time again and again and again. And so what would happen is he'd turn back time and his children would still be lured to the shore, and eventually they'd end up in the same position that they were before, and he'd do it again and again and again and again and again. And finally, he got to the place after he'd done this many, many times, and the outcome remained the same through all of those times. He came to a place where he comes to a place where he accepts his experience, and he accepts that he can't keep doing it, right? That it's not working, that he can't convince his children not to leave him, right? And so he gives up. And his children go on, and they shed their tails, their fish tails, and they become goats, who are the goats that exist on the earth right now. And he stays in the sea as the last of his kind, holding on to the past. And so we're going to talk a lot about Capricorn's relationship with the past, but I think there's some beautiful things in that myth that really encapsulate Capricorn, really in a lovely way, right? Like, and some of them that sort of demonstrate the shadows, right? Like, he's a wise, intelligent, which I keep stumbling on, honorable man, right? And I think that really, those are some of the most wonderful characteristics and qualities of Capricorn. And he has this sort of very like protector-like energy, he has this father-like energy. He just wants to make sure that everyone is safe and okay, and he knows that he can't protect his children on the shore, so he keeps dragging them back into the water. I think what's really interesting about it is that he has all of this control over time, and that he chooses to constantly bring them back into the past. And it takes him a while of experiencing the past over and over and over again in order to learn from his experience. And we'll talk a lot about this, but Capricorn has a relationship with history in the past as well. And I think that the other thing that's really interesting about this tale is his experience of loneliness, like of feeling like he's the last of his kind, or feeling like, everyone is leaving and everyone is moving on and he's stuck where he is, and this feeling of restriction, and that's going to come up a lot in the sort of where's the ouch section. But all of these themes fit really well into the experience of Capricorn, and I'm going to talk about how they fit in a happy, shiny, wonderful way, and all the contributions that this Capricorn energy can make to your life. But I'm also going to talk about the places where it hurts, where it's uncomfortable as well. So we'll start with elemental associations. Every sign has a relationship to a particular element. Capricorn is related to the element of earth. And what earth is about grounding your experiences in reality. It's about being present in your body and in the moment. It's about a physical experience of life. It's about a three-dimensional reality. It's about a connection to the earth and its inhabitants. And it's about a connection to the planet. And so when it comes to elemental associations, they're really good in compatibility astrology. They tell us the types of signs that are likely to have things in common, right? And when you have things in common and you speak a similar language and you understand or perceive the world in a similar way, or you choose to experience the world in a similar way, then that likeness leads to ease in interaction. And so Capricorn has a natural tie to the signs of Virgo and Taurus. That's not to say that those are the only signs that Capricorn is compatible with. In fact, one of the best possible matches for Capricorn is Cancer, the sign of Cancer. But I think it's important to just look at the fact that earth energy finds easy paths of interaction with other earth energy, and also know that sometimes you don't want the easiest interactions in the world, because the people that we grow from and the people that we learn from and the people that challenge us and change us and form us and shape us are the people who have an element of tension in our relationships with them, because that's what pushes us to change. That's what mirrors us, right? And I think it's also really important to remember that you're not your sun sign or your moon sign or your rising sign. So just because you're Capricorn doesn't mean you don't have a bunch of planets in water signs. It doesn't mean that you don't have every single other energy in your life and in your chart. And one of the things I want to say is I find a lot, like there are a lot of people who study their birth chart through lists, right? And so they look at lists instead of an actual chart. And when you look at lists, they miss out on signs that are intercepted. So if you have a list that doesn't have a particular, that says first house this, second house this, third house this, 12th house this. If you have a list that is missing a sign, it doesn't mean that energy is not in your life. It just means that energy is intercepted in one of the houses, which means that it's something that you should be paying even closer attention to. We'll look first at the sun. So the sun is in the birth chart it's what most people are familiar with. You ask people what their sign is, and they usually say their sun sign. But what it really means, it's who you are in stillness when no one is around and nothing is affecting you. So it's your set point, it's your starting point, and it's how you typically define yourself. But it's not usually how other people see you, or at least not people who are just meeting you. It's a part of yourself that sort of comes into play when you're in a space where you feel a sense of belonging and welcoming and comfort. And so throughout the course of this video, if you're a Capricorn sun, you want to look at the fact that, your soul is choosing to experience this energy in the sort of purest way possible. And you want to run it as clean as you possibly can, because that's part of your spiritual journey and it's part of your spiritual evolution. Capricorn moon. I am also a Capricorn moon. The moon in astrology is it's emotion, so it's how you feel, what makes you feel, how you demonstrate your feelings. All of those kinds of things are encapsulated by the moon in astrology. And so I want to say it's really important what house your moon is in. A Capricorn moon in the second house is an incredibly different energy than a Capricorn moon in the 8th house. So you want to look at the house placement, because it's also very, very important. But when you're listening to this video, if you're a Capricorn moon, what you want to sort of pay attention to is what behaviors come up for you when you're in a really good place and you feel really like healthy and happy and shiny and loved, and what behaviors come up for you when you're not feeling okay and when things are difficult and when you're struggling. And I want to sort of point out that earth-based moons, I believe that earth-based moons can be quite difficult moons to run, and a Capricorn moon or Taurus or Virgo tends to hold a lot of emotions in the physical body. They kind of get clogged and stuck there, right? So if you do have a Capricorn moon or any earth-based moon, you want to be very careful to find a way to flush your emotions out of your physical body through some sort of physical practice, be that yoga or Tai Chi or acupuncture, or maybe you're a runner and you feel like that's a meditative experience, or a hiker or something like that. But you want to come into a space where you're figuring out a way to physically flush your emotional clogs through some sort of discipline that includes the physical body. Capricorn rising or ascendant. So the rising sign, which is also called the ascendant, is the sign that's on the eastern horizon when you're born, and it represents the lens through which people see you, your personality, the things about you that are most obvious when people first meet you. And so the challenge, of course, is that just because other people see you that way doesn't mean you perceive yourself that way. We tend to see ourselves as our sun sign, or even perhaps our moon sign, but a lot of us can't see our rising very well, or it's unclear to us. And so there can be a sense of wounding around the world perceiving us in a way that we don't perceive ourselves, right? So throughout the course of this video, what you want to pay attention to is, what's most obvious about you to other people, what behaviors you're exhibiting that maybe you aren't recognizing, or what behaviors you could be switching to or shifting to. And just coming into a space where that even if this isn't a part of you that you're able to see, it is a part of you that the rest of the world can see in you. So one of the first things I always say when I talk about Capricorn is that Capricorn is about integrity, responsibility, dependability, honor, accountability, and trustworthiness. And I think all of those are really extraordinary gifts that you bring the world, right? It's about showing up in your life. It's about showing up for other people. It's about being the person that someone else can count on. It's about being responsible and trustworthy, and it's about doing the right thing when no one is watching. And I want to point at this for everybody, okay? Anyone who has a strong Capricorn, but in particular Capricorn moons, if you are out of integrity in your life, if you're lying, or if you're doing something that you know is wrong, or behaving in a way that you know is unethical, then you're going to be in a state of perpetual anxiety. You're going to be in a state of where you can't settle your emotions down. So, part of having a moon sign that's Capricorn is that you have to stay in this beltway. You have to stay in integrity. You have to be responsible, dependable, honorable, accountable, and trustworthy in order to feel safe in your life. And when anybody else is not those things, that's when you start to feel unsafe in your life. And for the sun, it's the same thing, right? Like who you are at your core, who you are, just at your sort of set point, the purest, most beautiful version of yourself encapsulates all of those qualities, and that is the profound gift that you give in your life. And the same can be said for someone who's a Capricorn rising, similar to the sun, right? And so I chose these sort of knights in shining armor for that reason. I think Capricorn does have that sort of relationship with the knight in shining armor who, sweeps in and fixes things and makes it okay and protects people and keeps them safe and has honor. So time is a huge, huge part of Capricorn. The astrology has different signs that have different relationships with time. Okay, Aquarius is related to the future, Taurus is related to the present, and Capricorn is related to the past. And so I want to sort of dig into that. I'm going to dig into that on a couple of levels through the following slides. But one of the things I have to say about Capricorn is that, two things. One, there's wisdom in the past. There's incredible wisdom in the past. There's wisdom in being able to see where you have been, to see where you could go. There's wisdom in being able to learn from your past experiences. There's wisdom in being able, there are Capricorns, especially very spiritual Capricorns, who have instant recall of past life experiences. So it's not just, I can remember what happened to me 5 years ago. Capricorn has a connection to the ancient past. It has a connection to the past of the soul, right? And it's just a bigger picture thing than most people think about when they think about Capricorn. So it's a connection to our history. Sometimes it can be a connection to our ancestry. Sometimes it can be a connection to our past lives, but it's a deep, meaningful, profound connection to the past. And the passage of time is really interesting for Capricorn, because if you have a lot of Capricorn energy in your chart, then you can feel like everything takes too long, like everyone else gets to move faster than you, and like you're constantly kept in the state of waiting and restriction. So I think it's really important to acknowledge that, and that I think falls back into that sort of Saturn energy, that on one hand, you have this fast, spinning rotation on your axis, and on the other hand, it takes you forever to make it around the sun. So it's this feeling that like nothing ever happens fast enough, and like, a little bit of restriction, right? And I think that can be really difficult for a lot of Capricorns. But what you want to bear in mind is that the reason that it takes longer, and the reason that there is this sense of feeling restricted, or that, time drips past very slowly, is really that you're here to build a great work. And a great work takes time, and it takes effort, and it takes commitment, and it takes a willingness to sometimes be a little uncomfortable. So Capricorn is about building something that will stand the test of time. And sometimes in order to build something that's going to stand the test of time, you have to take time to build it. So it's about making peace with the passage of time and connecting yourself to the past, to the ancient past, and to the history of your soul. And of course, as a result, and we'll talk about this in a bit, but like one of the biggest sort of things about someone who has a lot of strong Capricorn energy, it's usually someone who identifies as being an old soul, or who's someone who, was a kid that felt like an adult, or all those kinds of things. It's sort of this energy of like ancient wisdom and the wisdom of the elder, and we'll talk about that throughout the course of this video as well. History and ancient wisdom. So this is exactly what I was just talking about. So I really like the kid on the top. I used him twice, which you probably noticed. This little boy who's like, a tiny little kid who's wearing a gray beard and hair. And I kind of like that energy. It's like, no matter how old a Capricorn is, there's this sort of stableness and steadiness, and sort of a little bit of an energy of the elder. So, it's like the 20-year-old who's reasonable and responsible and feels like a 40-year-old, right? And the more the Capricorn energy, the more that you step into the role of the elder in your relationships, and into your interactions and all that kind of stuff. But like I said, Capricorn has a relationship with history, right? So the first picture I've used here is, relatively recent history, which is, part of history and may very well be what you're connected to. So, someone who's Capricorn, and they can have a really strong interest in studying history. They can have a particular fixation on a particular time period, which usually comes from soul history or past life experiences. But it's a sort of connection from milking the wisdom of the past and looking at what it is that we were supposed to learn that we maybe didn't learn, picking up the pieces and figuring out what jewels are still left in previous years or in the past or in our history. So it's usually an interest in history and an interest in the past. And so this is the first picture, right? Relatively recent history. And then we go a little bit further. Maybe, you have an interest in a little bit older history. Maybe you're fascinated with Lincoln, or you're fascinated with the Salem witch trials, or you're fascinated with, the 17th century or the 18th century or the 14th or the 15th or whatever, right? So, all of this is the energy of Capricorn. Whether your interest in the past is 50 years ago or 300 years ago, that's Capricorn. And then... so I don't think that we think about this as much when we think about Capricorn. So we think about this sort of solid, stable, steady interest in the past and this interest in history, and all this kind of stuff. But history includes the ancient past. It includes Incan history. It includes, the past of ancient cultures and indigenous cultures and, spiritual monuments and spirituality. All of that stuff is encapsulated in the energy of Capricorn, which has reverence for the past and finds the beauty and the jewels that lay in times forgotten, right? And of course, that extends beyond, someone who has strong Capricorn energy could have an energy in Easter Island heads, they could have an energy in ancient Egypt. They could have an energy that draws them to, ancient Chinese history or the ancient Chinese past. Again, it's not, just the contemporary past, it's ancient. And it's sort of this thread that ties all of your incarnations together. So it's connecting yourself with your soul's experience in body on multiple occasions throughout multiple different time frames. And part of Capricorn energy is this innate connection to the incarnations that your soul has lived, so your past life. And so for a lot of people, they don't know it's past life, they just have an incredible fascination with the 14th century England, but really what your soul is trying to do is pick up anything that you have had in previous lifetimes that you haven't fully integrated and absorbed, and figure out how to integrate it and absorb it in this lifetime by having that constant sort of energy where your personal energy in this life is returning to a period in history that you didn't quite finish up, or that you didn't quite learn from, or that you could be integrating more into your experience of this life. So it's a connection to history, it's a connection to ancient wisdom, but bigger than that, it's this thing in Capricorn energy that threads us to all the incarnations that we've lived in every single lifetime that we've ever lived them. So work and status. Like I said, Capricorn rules the 10th house, right? The 10th house is the house of work and status. And I included a bunch of pictures here because it's really important that we realize that work can be so many different things. The top one is a carver who's an artisan, right? The top left one, of course. And then the top right one is a carpenter. The bottom right one is a doctor, and the bottom left one is a business person. It's not about status in the way that you see it. It's about having a a personal identification with what you do for a living. And I think what's really interesting about Capricorn, it's not like I want to be a lawyer because I want to make lots of money and I want people to know that I'm a lawyer. You know, I'm not saying that's not part of it. Maybe that is part of it. But really it's about the fact that your soul knows that your biggest contribution is going to be through your work. And so you want, you know, you don't want to just be any artisan. You want to create the most beautiful bowls or statues that anyone has ever seen. You want to spend the time and make them really beautiful and put your heart and your soul and everything that you have into that work, right? And the same is said for the carpenter. You know, it's not about, you know, cutting wood boards. It's about contributing. It's about building someone's home and making it safe and you know, making it in such a way that you know that someone's life's going to change because of what you contributed, right? Of course, the same is for the doctor who chooses to build a life around making sure that people are as healthy as possible and teaching people how to interact and engage with their bodies so that they can live a full and vibrant life. And the same is said for the business person who's trying to, you know, make things easier, make someone's life easier by selling a particular product or service that can do good things for them. And so, you know, what Capricorn energy is at its purest is this sort of energy of service. It's like using your work to do something that matters to you, using your work, taking your work very seriously, being honorable in what you do and contributing to the world through your work. And it's a really important part of Capricorn energy. That energy, you know, if you're pure Capricorn energy, it has it that, like, if you're a cook, you're the kind of cook that it's a work of art. The plate is perfect, the food is perfectly cooked, you know, and you take it very personally if you've not done a good job. It's not about what you do, it's about the attitude that you bring into what you do. And the attitude that you bring into what you do when you have pure Capricorn energy is an attitude of service, it's an attitude of honor, it's an attitude of responsibility, and it's an attitude where you're giving back to your community. You know, like you look at the carpenter who's building someone's home, or you look at the, you know, carver who's creating something extraordinarily beautiful that's going to make someone smile every time they look at it. It's all the ways that we choose to bring something into the world that change people's experience of their day-to-day life. And that is the energy of Capricorn, honor and work. Capricorn also has, I chose a mountain goat that's climbing up a particularly steep cliff. And it has a relationship with challenge and difficulty. Saturn, who rules Capricorn, has this energy where it's like, I'm not going to let you have something that's not on a solid foundation. So if I don't like the foundation that you've built and I feel like there's something wrong with it, I'm going to rip it out from under you so that you have to rebuild it from scratch, so that you'll build something that is more stable and more solid. And I think the motto of Capricorn energy is, if you're going to do something, you do it well. You take time, you put effort in, and you make sure that it's as good as you're capable of giving. You do the best that you possibly can. And in all honesty, for some Capricorn energy, it's, and then you do the best that you possibly can, and then you get better and you redo it. So it's this constant energy of putting the best that you possibly can into the world and taking every task that you're given very seriously and contributing in the best way you can possibly contribute. And so part of Capricorn energy is, because that's your goal, is creating the best that you possibly can, or being the best that you possibly can. And it's not like a cocky kind of goal. It's like, you know, just really showing up in your life, really being present in your life, and really taking what you do very seriously. And so because of that, you have to accept a measure of challenge and difficulty, right? I mean, if you're going to create a brilliant work, if you're going to contribute to the world in an extraordinary way, then part of making that contribution has to be knowing that it's not always going to be easy, that you are going to have to work through adversity, that you're going to have to work through challenges. And pure sort of Capricorn energy is this willingness to accept challenge in order to create something that'll stand the test of time. It's to accept challenge in order to change yourself and to change your life. And it's this just sort of this willingness to evolve. And part of evolution is accepting that not everything is always going to be safe and shiny and happy and comfortable. And one of the things that comes up for me a lot in my in my readings and my consultations is, there are a lot of people who come into this space where they think that if things don't come easy, it's because the universe is blocking them from doing them and they should do something else. And sometimes that's true. But, Capricorn energy is this energy that says just because something is hard doesn't mean it's not right. Just because something is challenging doesn't mean that you shouldn't put all your effort into doing it. It doesn't mean that it's not meant to be. It's sort of this energy, they say like J.K. Rowling, the writer of Harry Potter, she had to apply to 12 different publishers and get rejected before she got her first letter that said that her book was going to be published, right? And then even when she got that letter, they only printed 4 copies or something like that, and it took a long time for her to get to where she wanted to get to, right? And so Capricorn energy is accepting that just because something doesn't land at your feet, just because something is difficult, just because you have to work for something doesn't mean that it's not worth doing, and doesn't mean that it's not what the universe planned for you in the first place. Integrity and ethics. So I talked about this a little bit earlier, but I wanted to include it again because I think if I could pick one word that encapsulates Capricorn energy more than any other word, it would be integrity. And integrity is, it's what I talked about earlier, which is doing the right thing when no one else is watching. But it's something deeper than that. Integrity is being on the inside the same that you're on the outside. It's not pretending to be something that you're not. It's honor, right? And it's straightforwardness, and like I said, being the same on the inside as you are on the outside. And ethics, of course, go along with that, right? Because ethics are about, I think ethics go along with integrity, but they have a different sort of angle, right? Because what ethics really are is basically you saying that you want to behave in a way that's honorable. You want to behave in a way that serves other people and that helps other people and that supports other people, and that you're unwilling to succeed at someone else's expense. I think that that's sort of the key of ethics. And so for Capricorn, this is the energy, this is the beltway, you want to be in the stream where things start happening and things are beautiful and wonderful things start happening to you in your life, and you draw extraordinary experiences and you change who you are and you show up in your life. Then these are the two energies that are braided together that create the doorway that you need to walk through to get there. It's coming into a space where you live in total integrity and where you have total ethics. And when you're in that space, your vibration is so high, the energy that you're running is so high that you draw extraordinary experiences to yourself. And so integrity and ethics become very big, important things when you're dealing with Capricorn energy. And of course, if you're a Capricorn moon or even a Capricorn sun, or Mars in Capricorn, integrity and ethics become things that make you feel safe, right? So if someone is out of integrity or someone is unethical, it's very upsetting for you and it's very unsettling for you. And so you have to make peace with the fact that not everybody is living in the state of integrity and ethics, and come into a space where you stay in that space yourself and you're unwilling to be pushed out of it, but at the same time make space for the fact that not everyone is going to join you there, and make peace with that, right? Stability and responsibility. Capricorn is a provider energy. It's like I go out and I work and I work hard and I take pride in what I do and I have honor in my work, and then I gain money, and through that money I build a home for myself that's solid and stable, and maybe not literally build a home for yourself, but like build a home for yourself and your family. It's this energy of wanting to be in a position where people can depend on you and people can rely on you, right? And so it's this drive to be stable, this drive to be responsible, this drive to build something, and this drive to keep everybody around you safe. Capricorn has this beautiful protective energy. Capricorn, if Capricorn's an employer, it wants to make sure that pure Capricorn, clean Capricorn energy as an employer wants to make sure that everyone that works for them is is stable and steady and safe and making a reasonable salary and treated properly and all that kind of stuff. So Capricorn energy is a protector energy, but it's also about making sure that everybody else is stable and safe and okay. So it's that kind of energy, and part of that stability, of course, for Capricorn is that if you have a strong Capricorn energy, you want to create that environment for your family where, you know, you have stable finances, you're in a place where you feel safe and where your family can feel safe and where you have that sort of responsibility and that protector energy. And that's male or female. Like, you know, it's not, I think it's dangerous to sort of gender this. You know, I've seen really powerful, strong women who are Capricorn bosses who take their role as boss very, very seriously and make sure that their employees are cared for, or single mothers running Capricorn energy that are building stability and safety for their children or whatever. So it can be, you know, masculine or feminine, but it's this energy of protecting other people and keeping them safe and building stability in a way that you make sure that everybody is safe. So then we move into the where's the ouch section. So this is sort of the energy of like what happens when emotionally you're not in a good space, when you're having a hard time emotionally, when you feel unsafe, when you feel hurt or slighted or wounded, or when things are just not going the way that you want them to be. And one of the things I want to say is that usually when things aren't going the way that you want them to be, it's one of the Capricorn topics that we talked about earlier. So it's like feeling unstable, feeling unsafe, having issues come up in your work like we talked about earlier, having relationship issues with your parent, with a father, all these kinds of things. So there's lots of reasons that you can feel unsafe. And again, you want to look at the house that Capricorn is in order to better understand that. But these are the behaviors that start coming up when you are in just not a good place, right? And so part of talking about them is not judging yourself for them. You know, it doesn't make you wrong or bad that you're experiencing these things. It's natural. It's part of how your soul is screaming at you that it needs attention. And it's part of how your heart is saying you're not paying attention to it and that you need to learn to listen more, right? And so where's the ouch? Stubbornness, inflexibility, and arrogance. So again, we talked about this earlier, like Capricorn is a protective energy. It's an energy, it's associated with old age, with wisdom, with the father, and it's a protective energy. And so when you're coming into this space where you sort of taking on the archetype or the role of the wise one, or the protector, or the one who's got everything in control and knows and is really stable and solid, then when things don't feel like that, you come into a space where you're putting on airs. And some of those airs is this arrogance, this sort of belief that because you're wiser than everyone else, or because you're carrying this really strong energy, that, you know, your opinion is better and more important than everyone else's, and that you're always right and everybody else is always wrong, and that you've got everything figured out, and, you know, you don't have to listen to anyone else because why would you need to, because you're wise, and all this kind of stuff, right? So I have this picture of course I'm being stubborn, I'm right, which I think is like the energy of the where's the ouch. It's not like an intentional, like I refuse to listen to you even though I'm wrong. It's I'm always right. Why would I need someone else's opinion in the first place, right? And this sort of inflexibility and immovability and this stubbornness. You know, one of the things about Capricorn is this energy. You know, we talked about the relationship with the past and how you have this incredible, beautiful things that can come from that connection to history. But one of the things also is that if you're so attached to the past, then sometimes it's hard to move into the present and open yourself to the future, right? So it's getting stuck in old patterns, it's getting stuck in old thought forms, it's getting stuck in the past, and, you know, holding on to everything with this kind of stubbornness where you never allow yourself to grow and shift and change, right? And so that's one of the things that come up. And of course, you know, again, like I talked about earlier, if you want to get out of that, you want to milk the past for what you haven't learned. So you look at the patterns that have come up in the past, you look at the things in the past that you didn't learn, you look at how you would like to do things differently in the future, and then you build a cocoon of integrity and ethics and responsibility and accountability and honor, and you move forward into a new world in that energy. Where's the ouch? Pessimism. We talked about this a little bit in the mythology. So it's this guy, in the myth we talk about how the father is trying to like reel back all of his kids in because he doesn't think any of them are going to be okay, and he's trying to protect them from the outside world, right? And part of Capricorn energy is being willing to see the hard stuff. It's being willing to see what's not working. It's being willing to see things that are uncomfortable. It's facing uncomfortable truths. It's facing hard truths. It's, it's the part of you that's sort of showing up and not hiding from difficulties and problems and challenges. But when you're sort of stewing in that energy all the time, it can lead to pessimism because it comes into a space where all you can see is the things that are wrong, and you forget seeing all of the wonderful, beautiful things in your life because all you can see is what's not wonderful and beautiful and shiny and happy. And so Capricorn, when it's running in shadow, when it's running from a place of wounding or hurt, comes into a space of pessimism. And that's just about balance. It's about learning that you can see the difficult things in your life without becoming absorbed by them, or without thinking that that's all there is in your life. Where's the it's detachment? So I'm always, as a Capricorn moon, I'm always super hesitant to put this one in, because I think there's a lot of stereotypes about Capricorn energy, and I think we have to be careful with them. But definitely Capricorn moon in particular has a sense of detachment from the world. It's like this lack of willingness to let your emotions flow naturally, because it sort of turns emotion into work, right? So it's like when you feel something, you try and like source it or fix it or change it, or when you feel something, you basically shut down, and then that emotion ends up in your physical body, right? And so in light, it's not a bad thing. We find lots of beautiful expressions of emotions. Capricorns feel things very, very deeply. It just takes longer to process those feelings, and it can be, being upset about something that happened 4 months ago, even though at the time you had no feelings about it whatsoever, because I think it's a very long process. For Capricorn moons. The same thing can be said for somebody who's a Capricorn sun or Capricorn rising. It just takes longer to process things. So, and that the reason for that is because you process them on a much deeper level, and because things look different 5 days after they happen. If you start, when something happens, if you react to it, it feels different and it looks different, and it carries less. You can't really milk it of its wisdom and depth until you let it sit and settle and figure out where it really sits and what it really is and what it really means. And so Capricorn energy is this energy of not reacting to something when it first happens. It's this energy of like letting it into your aura, trying to figure out what it is, and then taking the time necessary to really see it for what it is. And it's just the experience of Capricorn energy. The challenge is that it can lead to detachment, because if you're not reacting to what's going on around you, it can basically put a wall between you and the rest of the world, where you're sort of shutting out of your feelings, you're shutting out of your emotional body, and you're coming into a space where you're living a life in the outside world and in your contributions to the outside world without voyaging into your internal landscapes and figuring out what it means emotionally and running those emotions through your body and actually dealing with things. So there can be an energy of detachment when you have a lot of strong Capricorn energy in your chart. Of course, like I always say, if you have 10 planets in Cancer and your sun in Capricorn, then you have more Cancer energy. Obviously not 10 planets, but I'm exaggerating. But you get the point. If you have a bunch of planets in Cancer and your sun is in Capricorn, then you have a stronger Cancer energy than a Capricorn energy, and you have tons of emotion. So you can't base your entire, chart or base your entire interpretation of what you are based on your sun sign or your moon sign or your ascendant. But if you have a ton of Capricorn energy, it can be a detached experience of life and a detached experience of your feelings, and this sort of energy of like, pulling out of wherever you are so you can interpret it and plan for something different. So there is this energy of detachment when it comes to Capricorn energy. And I think the thing that I think is kind of nice is that Capricorn has this like energy that it's willing to accept challenge, and so this is a challenge. And one of the ways that you can heal this energy is to come into a space where you consciously create space to feel things. Not try and fix them, not try and change them, not try and solve them, but just allow them to integrate through your body. And like I said, it's really important for really strong Capricorn energies to find a way to have a physical experience of life that will allow for a release. So running, Tai Chi, yoga, acupuncture, acupressure. There's probably 1,000 other alternative methods, whether you're going to, Himalayan crystal rooms and whatever it is. You want to have a physical way that you can release things that are trapped inside that you haven't dealt with or processed yet. When there is an ouch depression, Capricorn, one of the biggest shadows, I might have this in a slide later, so I might have to skip it. But one of the biggest shadows of Capricorn is a feeling of aloneness. It's a really big shadow. This feeling of isolation, this feeling of being alone. And I think part of that is Capricorn's this sort of leadership energy. Like I said, it's this protecting energy, it's this leadership energy, and there's nowhere lonelier than the top of the ladder. There's no one to keep you company. There's no one that you've put on a peer level to keep you feeling safe and protected, right? And so you get this sense of isolation when you set yourself above or outside of the groups that you're in, right? So a Capricorn energy, Saturn energy, particularly if you have Saturn or Capricorn in the 12th house, it can lead to an experience of depression where the world just feels like this bleak and horrible place. And part of that is like what I talked about earlier, which is around this energy of being able to see the tough stuff in life, being able to accept challenge, being able to accept difficulty, being able to accept restriction. It's a lot to ask from someone. It's a really intense and challenging energy to run in a positive way. So it's about self-forgiveness, it's about self-acceptance, it's about self-love, and it's about actively seeking out ways to find joy in your life. It's about actively, one of the things that I think with Capricorn energy is that you feel guilty if you're not producing. You feel guilty if you're not working and doing something that's contributing, right? And so one of the really important parts of Capricorn energy is building space and time in your life to do things that honor your need to feel joy, that honor your need to play, that honor your need to have a good time and to do something that feels good in your body, right? So, or not just in your body, but just that feels good, right? So, and I think that the depression comes because you make life work. You make your entire life work. It's about growing, it's about shifting, it's about changing, it's about evolving, it's about contributing, it's about providing, it's about all of these things, and the responsibilities end up crushing you. And so you have to come into a space where you make time in your life to do something that has no other purpose or serves no other purpose than it makes you happy. And that's a really difficult task for a Capricorn, but it's really important. And I just talked about this, so isolation, right? So I think, the Hermit card in the tarot nicely represents Capricorn energy. It's the sage, it's sort of related to later in life. It has that sort of wisdom, that history, that past, that sort of wealth of experience and contributions, right? But part of that is that you're setting yourself outside of the rest of the world into this place of like the hermit, right? So you're isolating, or you're alone, or you're finding it difficult to connect with other people. And so Capricorn energy, when it's hurt, isolates itself, it sort of pulls out of the world, detaches from the world, and you have to be just really careful of that to make sure that you keep your ties, that you create relationships that are at a peer level. You create relationships with mentors who are at like a higher level, that can teach you something, that can be that for you, that can change your life that way. So it's this energy that like part of the work of being a Capricorn or having really intense, powerful Capricorn energy in your life is just making sure that you don't check out of your life, that you don't check out of relationships, that you show up in relationships, and that you just make sure to the best of your ability that you make the relationships in your life a priority, and you actively look at creating relationships that you have peers, that you have people who are at the same level than you and that can see things clearly, and then you listen to them when they speak. So it's just a sense of isolation, right? And then possibility. So this is just sort of the end where I talk about like the amazing things that Capricorn energy has and how it contributes and why it's fabulous and fantastic. And so I'm going to start from left and go to right. And so the top left-hand card is Seek Wisdom. I think Capricorn energy, not only does it seek wisdom, but it has this incredible wisdom that it's connected to from ancient times and from past lives and from this life and from history and from all this kind of stuff. So it brings the wisdom of the elder into the world. Even when the person that you're talking about is like 6 years old, there's sort of this like sage-like wisdom that sits inside of Capricorn energy. It's this this solidness, this groundedness, this just wisdom, right? So it's about bringing that energy into the world. It's about it's about bringing that energy into the world. But I think the other thing that it's about showing up. It's about really showing up in your life and showing up in relationships and using all that incredible wisdom and that sort of, sage-like presence to help others and to shift other people's experiences and to just really show up for other people, right? To care for people and to love people and to protect them and to just show up in all of those beautiful, extraordinary ways. The two pictures below are the knights that I used earlier. I think I just really like them. I think they encapsulate Capricorn energy really well. I think they're like fierce, they're protective energy, they're willing to do anything to make sure that someone else is safe. They're honorable, they're responsible, they're accountable. And they have that sort of like old age Knights of the Round Table, a whole bunch of people gathered together to make sure the world was a safe and wonderful kind of place and all that kind of energy. And I think the world just needs more of that energy, people who are just in total integrity and people who care about other people and protect them and show up in the world even when it's not easy and, do things that are the right things even when no one else is looking and just behave from this place of integrity. I think it's such a gorgeous and beautiful energy to bring into the world. And I think in so many areas, it's what's missing from the world, particularly in business. I think we need more Capricorn to come back into business and for people to really show up. And I think it's this sort of energy of remembering that, you're not just the boss, you're responsible. You're responsible for every single person who's beneath you on the chain. You're responsible for their, their health and happiness. You're responsible for their, for their wealth and contribution. And Capricorn energy, it's strange because even though it has a relationship with isolation, it's really about entanglement, like this willingness to take responsibility, this willingness to show up for other people, this willingness to contribute, this willingness to be something to the world that matters and to live a life of honor. And I think that's just this really beautiful, extraordinary gift that Capricorn energy brings to the world. And I'd love to see more clean Capricorn energy in the world for that reason. The middle picture is a mountain climber with his little picky axie guys. And I picked him just because I think I don't know, it reminds me of the goats. And I think it's this energy of like this willingness to climb really steep cliffs and to do things that are a little uncomfortable and to take on things that feel like they're not even possible, take on incredible challenges in order to change the world and to change yourself and to change your family. And I think, Capricorn has this just really honorable sort of energy where it's willing to be uncomfortable in order to make someone else's life better, or it's willing to be uncomfortable in order to make your life better, and I think it's a gorgeous energy, this energy of like accepting that life is not always perfect. That doesn't mean you get to sort of throw in the towel, and accepting that there is wisdom and there is beauty and there are lessons that come with things that are uncomfortable or difficult, right? I think that's a real gift for Capricorn energy. Willingness to see that and to accept it and to bring it into the world and to help other people accept that challenge or that difficulty as well. The bottom right hand picture, it's just like an ancient scroll, right? And I think, again, I just love the idea that, that Capricorn has this relationship to the past, to history. And I think there's so many beautiful things that we've lost, so much wisdom that we've lost from the past. And there, we have so much that we could learn, and so many things that we could gain in life if we found a way to connect to, lessons of old year. And like one of the classic sort of examples that I use is in astrology. Like ancient astrology was just much more accurate than contemporary astrology. The axial tilt of the earth has changed, and so the positions that we use in contemporary astrology were positions that the ancients used when we had a different tilt of the earth. So their planet placements and sign placements were much more accurate than our current ones are. They had incredible wisdom in ancient astrology. The pyramids were built to line up perfectly with the stars, particularly Sirius, lined up perfectly with Sirius in the Valley of the Kings, right? And so they had this really amazing sort of knowledge, which I think they tried to encapsulate in a lot of really amazing books. The Book of Enoch, and the ancient Vedas, and I'm sure there's lots of wisdom in the Bible and things like that for people who look at those kinds of things, or just like all sorts of other texts from different places, right? So it's this ability to look at ancient things and to repurpose them for contemporary times so that they're palatable, and so that we can use them to heal and change and shift our world and to make it a better place, and just have these incredible contributions to the world. So it's milking the wisdom of the past, right? And I think there's great value and great beauty in that. And then the top one is a picture from Good Will Hunting, which is one of my favorite movies. And basically it's just a picture of this guy doing a great work, right? So he's solving an unsolvable math puzzle, problem, I suppose. And that, again, is sort of Capricorn energy. Not necessarily the energy of solving the puzzle, but the energy of like this, this guy, he's not getting paid to solve that puzzle. No one told him to solve it. There's just something in him, inside of him, this fire and this energy deep inside of him that's pushing him to do it, that's pushing him to do something that no one's ever done before, that's pushing him to contribute in a way that he's not getting any credit for. He does it anonymously. He's not getting anything for it. He just is doing it because his soul is crying out that that's how he can change the world. And it might not use those words, and he might not be doing it because he thinks he's going to change the world, but at the core, he knows that the work of his life is that math puzzle, and so he's going to do everything in his power to solve it, even if he doesn't ever get any credit for it. And I think that that's the most extraordinary, clean, pure, beautiful Capricorn energy. It's this willingness to contribute. It's this willingness to build something of substance, to build something that matters, and to do it not because of the acclaim, to do it not because of how other people are going to perceive you, or because of how much money that you're going to get, but to do it because there's honor in contributing, because there's honor in good work, there's honor in showing up in your life and being responsible, and there's honor in in building your talents into a career, and doing it with integrity, and contributing to other people's lives, and showing up and genuinely doing the best that you're capable of doing, and bringing your whole soul and spirit and heart into what you do on a day-to-day basis. Thanks for listening. This was Bonnie with Heal with Astrology, and this was Capricorn.